They didn't understand what he was. To the diplomats aboard the Galactic Unity Council ship, Richter, he was a quiet, well-muscled specimen of the human species. Compact, hair clipped short, dressed in a black duty uniform, devoid of rank or insignia. Standing in a corner like furniture that might decide to move, the Kael'thari called humans mid-tier sentients. Hardy, primitive, harmless. Their mistake was assuming the humans had sent an observer. They didn't know Earth had sent him. Master Gunnery Sergeant John Richter stood with hands folded behind his back, face impassive. He didn't flinch as the towering Kael'thari commander hissed and postured across the room, his 6 clawed arms gesturing wildly in the stilted speech of the translator grid. "This meeting is a waste of time," the Kael'thari snarled, spittle flicking from his mandibles. "We have already crushed the Tarashi homeworld. These primates want to talk morality." The human didn't blink, just tilted his head slightly. The Terran diplomat, a lanky academic named Rachel NG, tried to diffuse things. "The Council has standards of engagement. Civilians, non-combatants. There are treaties in place to protect. There is only the strong, the Kael'thari, cut in, and the obedient." The Tarashi resisted. "We corrected them." Richter stepped forward. Calm, controlled, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. He didn't raise his voice. "So you murdered them all." "Correction," the Kael'thari rasped with a grin. "We sterilized their population centers and deployed neurotoxins in all oxygenated environments. Efficient, thorough." The alien commander sneered. "What would your kind have done, little ape? Throw rocks and cry." Richter gave a thin smile. It's a kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. It's a kind you see on sharks right before they bite. "We would have filed a war crimes report," he said. There was a pause, then laughter. The Kael'thari commander's thorax rattled as he roared in delight. "War crimes," he coughed. "Do you think this council punishes victory?" Richter took 2 steps forward. One hand slowly went to the side of his belt. Not for a weapon. For a small black cube, the kind used in Terran briefings. He pressed the activation node. The air shimmered. A projection emerged. The image was grainy. Low-res, but unmistakable. A city alien, certainly not human-built. Fires in the distance, screaming. The camera jerked, showing shadowy shapes running through the streets. Then came the Terran infantry. Small, armored shadows with glowing visors, moving like wolves through smoke. Then came him. There he was, Richter. 20 years younger, same dead eyes. They weren't invading. They were retaliating. In the footage, his team breached a structure. Screams inside, gunfire, then something else. A sound that didn't match the weapons. Flame. Fire that stuck to things. Is that the alien delegate began, suddenly unsettled? "Thermobarics," Richter said quietly. "Fuel-air mix. Used it on war beasts twice our size back on Zat-9. Broke the Geneva codes doing it." The Kael'thari's grin faltered. "You used illegal weapons." Richter nodded. "And biologicals. Gas that makes your skin crawl off. Smart dust that eats electronics and brains. We dropped rods from orbit tungsten, no warhead, just physics." The alien hissed. "You admit this. These are crimes." Richter took a slow step forward. "You ask what we do? We document it. We hold tribunals, trials. Then we classify and bury the evidence under 30 years of disinformation. The people we did it to." He gave a cold smile. "Didn't survive to press charges." The Kael'thari had gone silent. Even the translator whirred nervously. "We had limits," Richter continued. "Rules, protocols, things we weren't supposed to do. We called those war crimes." He leaned in slightly, just enough that the alien had to brace himself. "You brag about wiping out a planet? That's not impressive. That's just genocide. You don't understand what real monsters are. Rachel the diplomat was frozen, lips parted. She'd heard rumors, whispers about the Black Ops side of the Terran Marines, but she'd never seen it spoken aloud. Richter turned off the cube. Darkness returned. "You think you're predators?" he said, stepping back into the shadow. "We train our children with stories about people like you. We raise them on horror films and VR simulations where they win." The Kael'thari swallowed. His mandibles clicked once. "You've committed these war crimes against who?" "Anyone who crossed the line," Richter replied. "Sometimes our own." The alien took an involuntary step back. Richter's voice dropped to a whisper. "Now imagine what we'll do to you if you keep pushing." The Kael'thari delegate did not speak again. Outside the conference hall, later, Rachel caught up with Richter. "What the hell was that?" He glanced at her, emotionless. "Deterrence." She lowered her voice. "Did you really use nerve gas?" He didn't answer, just walked away, 'cause some questions don't need answers. Some are just warnings. There are two kinds of people who get nightmares: those that do too much and those that do too little, but both kinds suffer anyway. For some, nightmares are just dreams. To others, they're a prophecy. Richter always thought he'd be safe. But sometimes ghosts come home. Custom work, subsonic, cloaked, designed for asymmetric environments. Richter's weapon was older. A heavily modified HN-29 coil rifle. Matte black, zero lights. On one monitor, a live feed played. Tarashi civilians, young ones, strapped two upright slabs, eyes wide, still alive. Gas seeped into their enclosure. One boy kicked violently, trying to scream. Another began convulsing. Richter's jaw tightened. No sound. No fury. Just protocol. He spoke into the comped experiment log files and samples. Then torch everything. Copy, came a whisper. Outside the facility, 20 minutes later, Richter stood alone as the horizon changed color. The fireball rose in perfect silence, first orange, then blue-white, then gone. 187 Kael'thari dead. No survivors, no records. The Council would investigate. They'd find no sign of Earth's involvement. Just a warning, a ghost. It looked like it had been through 5 wars, and it had. He checked the safety, then looked up. "You didn't tell me you were going personally," she whispered. "I thought you'd advise." "Send a strike team," he replied, peeling off one glove. "I did," Richter said. "I was the strike team." She stared at him. "The Council, they'll see this as a message." He met her eyes. Calm, cold. "Good. Do you even care what they think?" She shook her head, barely. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on knees, voice like gravel. "You know what makes something a war crime," he said. "Losing?" He stood abruptly. Only losers get judged. Then he walked toward the airlock. The door slid shut behind him with a hiss. Rachel exhaled, long and shaky. She hadn't realized till now what humanity had really unleashed into the stars. Not a warrior. A weapon. No words. Just a nod. The rear ramp dropped. Silence. Snow and black rock stretched across the horizon. Moonlight caught the edge of the facility, gray and domed, its surface glowing faintly from the thermal vents underneath. The operators fanned out like liquid shadow, their forms vanishing into the night. Richter moved slower than the others. Not because he was cautious, because he didn't have to hurry. The Kael'thari perimeter was standard drones, seismic plates, proximity mines. Standard to them. Richter had walked through worse on accident back on Vega Prime. The first kill came at 30 meters. A Kael'thari sentry, motionless near a ridge, eyes scanning the open terrain. Didn't even feel the monomolecular filament slide through his neck. No scream, no thud. Just absence. By the time Richter reached the facility wall, His team had already disabled the primary sensors and spoofed the satellite relay. For minutes, zero alarms. He tapped once on his comm. Breaching in 60. No response. They didn't need one. He placed a compact-shaped charge near the base of the wall. Silent burn, minimal debris. The wall peeled open like a tin can under pressure. Inside a hallway, long, empty, smelled like chemicals and insect husks. The team flowed through like poison gas. Kael'thari scientists and technicians never saw it coming. No firefights, just sudden darkness. One moment at a console, the next nothing. In the vast emptiness of space, the smallest gesture is a battlefield. Richter watched the dropship rattle around him like a tin can in a hurricane. Sealed in his power armor, his helmet's HUD dimmed, he sat in silence. Same for the other 5 members of Task Group 7-1. They were ghosts. And not just any ghosts, mind you. It's a best of the best. Black-badged, officially unacknowledged, officially sanctioned ghost operators. 6 shadows on a blood-red throne. Only one thing tied them together. Richter, the boy wonder, the problem child. The man who broke the Combine. Their mission had changed. The Kael'thari pacification campaign had turned from a political issue to a military one after someone leaked footage of the sterilization strikes on the Tarashi homeworld. 500 million dead. Hatchlings, infants, civilians. The Galactic Unity Council wrung their hands and cried about morality. Earth didn't cry. Earth called him. Richter checked the briefing one last time. A Frontier Moon Yiltrax 4 held a Kael'thari forward garrison, officially a communications outpost. Unofficially, a chemical weapons lab. The Council wouldn't act, not without a 2/3 vote and 6 months of protocol. So Earth sent a message. 30 seconds, barked the pilot. No response, no acknowledgement. Each member of 7-1 reached for their weapon. Richter found the central lab. Rows of alien canisters. Glass tanks with something floating inside. Kael'thari embryos, some misshapen, others violently mutated. Back aboard the extraction vessel, Richter sat down opposite Rachel NG, the same diplomat from the meeting. She looked pale, shaken. War is an ancient practice. Organized, industrialized warfare is a recent development. Before the 20th century, most wars were fought by individuals or small bands of men. Warriors whose weapons were limited to swords and bows and fists, but still, those were the deadliest times. The deadliest warriors were forged in that era. Too coordinated. Someone had tipped them off. But they didn't find Earth ships. No Terran presence. Just ash, rubble, and radiation that scrambled their sensors. And when they replayed the fragmented footage from the lab's black box, just one shaky frame survived. The analyst, a spindly, nervous Kael'thari with only 2 functioning eyes, tapped into the Terran black file. It was mostly redacted, but one detail remained. Name: John Richter, the analyst said. Last known operation was 21 years ago, Vega Insurgency. The commander leaned forward. The Vega operation was, unsuccessful, wasn't it? The analyst looked pale. Sir, it was classified. But what we do know is that a Kael'thari battalion was deployed there during the final cycle, and not one returned. The commander's mandibles clicked nervously. That was a full division. Correct silence. The Kael'thari finally began to understand. They hadn't found humanity's strongest warrior. They had provoked its oldest weapon. It showed a man, human, expressionless, walking through fire like it didn't notice him. The Kael'thari Council convened in secret. His orders weren't written. There was no confirmation from Earth, just a voice in a private channel that had said, simply, make sure they don't forget. Richter's drop pod hit the command deck like a hammer from the gods. The floor caved in under the impact. Smoke, alarms, then fire. He came out swinging. Coiled rifle braced against his shoulder. rounds so dense they punched through alien armor like it was cardboard. One Kael'thari got close. Mistake. Richter flipped him by the throat, broke 3 of his limbs, and drove a knife into the base of his thorax. 4 minutes later, the command deck was silent. He walked past smoldering bodies toward the central console, inserted a Terran encryption spike. All across the Kael'thari fleet, every screen flickered. Then the message played. It was Richter, helmet off, eyes unreadable, voice calm. You called us primitive, weak, harmless. Pause. You're confusing civilized with incapable. Don't. Another beat. We made rules for war because we know what happens without them. We wrote books on restraint because we've needed them. Static crackled as he stared into the camera. And when we break our own rules, he leaned closer. You're not ready for that. You never were. Then the feed cut. Panic followed. Fleet movements scrambled. Commanders issued erratic orders. Even Kael'thari civilians began protesting the war. Because they didn't fear Terran armies anymore. They feared the individual, the ghost, the war crime in human form. Richter, the humans had responded with what could only be described as surgical horror, not mass-scale planetary bombardment. Not indiscriminate killing. Surgical horror, the kind of thing you couldn't blame on rogue factions or bad luck. So the Kael'thari escalated. They deployed cleansers, battle-hardened extermination units across neutral zones suspected of housing Terran-aligned species. The orders were blunt. No prisoners. 3 days later, a Kael'thari dropship never returned from one of those missions. Then a second, then a third. What they didn't know, what none of them could have predicted, was that Richter was already there. And he wasn't alone. A warrior who can adapt to any environment, fight with any weapon, survive on nothing but his wits. The kind that didn't file reports. The kind that disappeared for 20 years and came back with blood-stained medals that no one asked about. 5 Terran operators moved through the shadows of the jungle moon Varellon 3, like wolves among sheep. The Kael'thari had numbers, armor, firepower. Richter had experience. And he had men who followed him without hesitation, because they'd all seen what happened when he didn't hold back. They didn't just ambush patrols. They didn't just destroy supply lines. They made examples. Kael'thari bodies hung from trees. Drones reprogrammed to fly back to their carriers, carrying explosive surprises. Every time they tried to triangulate the humans, they were already gone. And every night, across Kael'thari comms, the same whispered phrase began to appear. Ask about the war crimes. It spread like a virus. Until even frontline soldiers began to hesitate. Because if this was how humans behaved when they were angry, then what would they do if they were truly at war? Those are the most dangerous warriors of all. That's why Earth sent him. That's why John Richter has arrived. The retaliation came faster than expected. 3 Kael'thari cruisers jumped into orbit above Yiltrax for less than 12 hours after the lab sys destruction. Too fast. He'd activated Protocol Black Signal, a dead drop code known only to Earth's off-the-books response units. In a secure bunker orbiting Kael'thari Prime, a high commander demanded a debrief. Who is this human? Richter, meanwhile, was already en route to his next target. A Kael'thari command ship orbiting neutral space, used to coordinate military suppression efforts across 17 systems. The story you just heard was an excerpt from the book Light of the Fallen Day by New York Times best-selling author John Scalzi. EarthGov was nervous. Not because they feared the Kael'thari. That concern had evaporated the moment Richter sent his broadcast from their own command ship, drenched in blood and silence. No, they feared him. In the Earth's Central Security Complex, deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, a dozen senior officials sat around a reinforced glass table, holoscreens hovering above their hands. He's gone off script, one muttered. He's not off script, said another. This was the script. We built him for this. Bullshit. He was never supposed to escalate. A general cleared his throat. He hasn't violated any direct orders. That's because we never gave him any. He's acting on implied doctrine. He's interpreting silence as approval. Silence followed. Finally, the president of the United Terran Alliance, a woman whose expression had changed in 2 wars, folded her hands. Then break the silence, she said. Recall him. Everyone turned to the director of the Black Cell Division. He was pale, sweating. We can't. The president narrowed her eyes. What do you mean you can't? He hesitated. He disabled his failsafes, burned the comlinks, deleted his own extraction codes. What? He's in the wind, running a full ghost protocol. Jesus, someone muttered. The room was still. Then someone said what no one wanted to. If Richter's gone rogue, we may need to neutralize him. Another laughed bitterly. You gonna send a team? Who? Marines? Operators? The council? No, said the first. You send a priest. Then a cleanup crew. The president sat quietly for a long time. Then let him finish. Everyone turned to her. If the Kael'thari surrender, we'll disavow him. Say he went rogue. If they don't, let the monster do what we built him for. Meanwhile, in deep orbit near the Kael'thari inner systems, Richter prepared for his next operation. Alone, his team had been rotated out. Too hot, too visible. He didn't care. The Kael'thari had killed civilians, hatchlings, used gas and acid and fear. That wasn't war. That was extermination. They called it efficiency. He called it weakness disguised as dominance. His target, the Kael'thari cultural core, a floating citadel of knowledge, propaganda, and nationalistic pride. It wasn't a military target. That was the point. They had broken the rules. He was going to show them what real breaking looked like. No explosives, no orbital strike. He landed inside, wearing a stolen Kael'thari uniform modified for his shape, walked past guards, past scanners, straight to the heart chamber. There 12 elders stood debating the next stage of the war, droning in circles about strategy, compliance, cultural superiority. He walked into the middle of them, laid down a black box, pressed the trigger. It played no message. It didn't explode. It just broadcast the names of every civilian killed on Yiltrax 4. Every child, every non-combatant. Thousands of names, spoken in their own language. Then came the images. The ones Richter's team had recovered. The ones too horrible to forget. The elders stopped speaking. They stood there, mandibles slack, as the truth bled out around them. When it ended, Richter looked each of them in the eye. Quiet, controlled. One of them whispered, "What is this?" Richter answered simply, "The prosecution." Then he left. Didn't kill anyone. Didn't burn it down. He didn't need to. The next day, 3 Kael'thari generals defected. By week's end, their fleets began refusing orders. And across the galaxy, the Kael'thari word for war crime was replaced with a new one. Richter. It was a contact from old Earth, a soldier named Richter. And when the galaxy heard his story, it went silent. The galaxy had gone quiet. The Kael'thari sent no new fleets, no new orders. They stopped responding to internal communications. Their embassies emptied overnight. Their broadcasts fell to static. Because one man had walked through their fire and made them feel ashamed. He let the silence stretch until the whole chamber leaned forward. You should have feared our restraint. Someone clicked nervously in a back row. We learned war through history. Through failure. Through atrocities. You thought that made us weak. It made us aware. Of course, I never looked. I mean, why would I? But sometimes in the middle of the night, I could swear I heard scratching. So I'd get up and walk to the closet. And every single time, no matter how many times I checked, the closet was empty. When I grew up and joined the military, I became the best damn soldier my country ever saw. Went to Ranger School, got selected for Special Forces. I did all the training, earned all the medals, became a legend. I lived for war. And there was one reason, and one reason only, because I believed there were monsters out there and I wanted to kill them all. Sold my story to the highest bidder, a rich nerd with a sick addiction for speed. And all the while, the monsters watched and waited, hiding in the shadows, growing stronger. Now, the galaxy is waking up. They're taking notice, and soon they'll join the fight. And together, we toured the galaxy, visiting every world, every culture, meeting everyone. I told them about the monsters, how they hid in the dark, how they fed on fear and hatred, how they whispered lies that made people turn on each other. And then I showed them the stars, told them about the nights when the universe opened up and revealed the truth. And in the vast emptiness, you can see clearly who our real enemies were. His eyes scanned the room. You think war crimes are evil? Well, maybe not tonight, but there might be tomorrow or the next day or the day after that. You never know when they come. You just have to be ready. Then he'd give me a flashlight and teach me how to use it. But they are also warnings. Signs that someone crossed a line they themselves drew. He leaned forward. You never drew a line. Not beaten, not bombed, ashamed. And that did what no planetary bombardment ever could. Right? It broke their will. But there were nights when everything aligned. The constellations formed shapes in the darkness, and the monsters emerged from the void. And there I was, bathed in the cold glow of distant stars, waiting for the first attack. The Galactic Unity Council called an emergency session. Every species attended, even ones that hadn't taken sides, and Earth. Earth sent no diplomat this time. At least it was until I found out that we weren't fighting the right war. We were fighting each other. They sent Richter. He entered the council chamber alone. No armor, no weapon. It's just the same black fatigues, the same stare, the same silence. The chancellor of the council, a four-eyed avian diplomat who had once laughed at humanity. As quaint moral codes now flinched when Richter passed. He took the center podium. No guards moved to stop him. You feared our capacity for violence, he said. No one breathed. You were wrong. The chancellor finally spoke, voice shaking. What do you want? Richter stared. We want peace. The room exhaled as one. But not because you're afraid, he continued. We want peace because we remember what happens when we stop being afraid of ourselves. He turned and began walking toward the exit. The Kael'thari delegation stood to speak. Richter stopped them with one sentence. I'm not your enemy. I'm the echo of your next one. Then he left. Weeks later, the Kael'thari signed a ceasefire. Then a full withdrawal. Then reparations. The Council passed the Terran Rules of Engagement as universal law. Humanity didn't demand tribute or territory, just memory. They wanted the galaxy to remember that somewhere out there, beneath quiet oceans and distant moons, humans taught their children about monsters, then trained to become worse. And if those monsters ever came back, they'd send the man who walked through hell to remind them why war crimes had names. His name was John Richter. And in the stars, his name meant, don't push Earth. My father always told me stories about monsters. Big, hairy monsters under my bed, in my closet, even behind my bookshelf. See, Dad, there's nothing here. He'd just smile and pinch my cheek. And I thought, how weird is that? This guy's teaching me to fight monsters with a flashlight. The galaxy is big. So big that most nights I couldn't see past my own ship. War is scary. When you're waiting for it, it's terrifying. But when it comes, it's beautiful. For me, it was like going home, so I left. Retired from the military, returned to Earth, and wrote a book. For thousands of years, humanity has been at war with itself, destroying planets, exterminating species, committing atrocities. If we don't stop, if we don't stand up and fight the real monsters, then this war will never end.